Hey guys, how's it going? Jacob here. Welcome back to another Doctor Who video on my channel. In today's episode, it's not exactly an ongoing series, but it's an episode nonetheless. I'm going to be talking about my favorite stories from the modern Doctor Who era. It can be from 9, 10, 11, 12, etc., whatever there is so far, 2005 onward. And obviously, all this is subjective to me. You can have your own opinions. I'm not a professional critic. Personally, I don't really believe that there is such a thing as a professional critic because I don't think you can really be professional at having opinions. Like, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. You can't outweigh someone's opinion when it comes to something like your favorite TV show. But if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you hit that like button down below to show some support, comment your thoughts, and possibly even put your list of your 5 favorite, and subscribe if you're new to the channel and you enjoy what you see. Ring that bell to be notified about more uploads. But with that, let's go ahead and get started. So, definitely a very common one for people is going to be Vincent and the Doctor. From season 5, it is definitely one of the ones that people will notice very often because it was just written so well to me. I found it very interesting how you see the Doctor and Amy go back in time and they meet Vincent Van Gogh. I'm just going to say Van Gogh. I know they... Actually, wait, hold on. Wait, no. I'm American, so typically I would say Van Gogh. That's weird how I instinctively said Van Gogh, like how they said in the episode. So, I don't know. Let's just see what happens. But yeah, they went back in time and met Vincent Van Gogh, and because they noticed that there was this monster in one of his paintings. So they decided to think that so they thought that looks like something evil. So they decided to go back in time to see what it was because they thought that's something that shouldn't belong there. And I thought that was interesting how you got to see just the ecstasy that seems to go through Van Gogh's mind, how he would always try to sell his paintings but no one seemed to care. He was basically the town pariah. No one liked him. They thought of him as a monster. So they always tried to get rid of him. And then how the Doctor and Amy were showing appreciation to him, but he thought that it was just kind of weird because he thought everyone usually hates me and my paintings. And I like the idea of the Grapheus, the alien in the story, how it turns out that the whole time it wasn't actually attacking because it was wild. It was because it was blind, so it couldn't see, and how it was separated from the rest of its species. So it was basically just on this planet alone and scared. And then how it ended up dying, and it's like you saw Vincent felt guilty about it because it was just an innocent creature that was alone and scared. And then just throughout the time, I really liked how you saw them bond with Van Gogh. How at times you saw him get angry and go crazy, but then he was saying, oh, that's just me going through a fit. Like, I get over that stuff pretty quickly. And then how you saw Amy, Vincent, and the Doctor lying in the grass, and he was saying, try to see the world how I see it. So you saw the sky turn into all these different colors, and then it eventually turned into the painting Starry Night, which I thought just looked really great. How you got to see things the way Vincent saw it. Instead of just like seeing some plain sky, he's like, oh, it's like all these different shades of blue and the stars are swirling all over the place. And then whenever they were about to leave, Vincent was saying, you actually made a difference in my life, but I don't know how I'm going to do without you. So then they decided to try to make one more impact on his life. So they took him to the future where they were at the museum that they were at the beginning. And they had this one curator there talk to the Doctor about Vincent, saying, what is Vincent Van Gogh to you? And he went on this big long speech talking about how there's never been a better painter than Van Gogh, and there probably never ever will be, because he just always took what was passionate and painful to him and made it something that looks so beautiful. And I just thought that was really amazing. And then how whenever they get back to Vincent's time, then they leave, and you see that he was really happy. They made a difference. But then when they get back to the present, it turns out that Vincent still ended up killing himself. But then the Doctor's saying, oh, we did make some changes. Even though he didn't live a long life, we definitely made it so that he was more happy by the end. And then at the very end, you see this painting of sunflowers, which is already a Van Gogh painting. But then on there, it said, for Amy from Vincent, because Amy suggested that he should paint sunflowers, and then it turns out that he ended up making that painting specifically because of Amy, because Vincent actually did fall in love with Amy. He wanted to be with her. So I just thought that was really interesting how they did make such a difference on his life, even though he did kill himself, that it was something that even then, for a brief amount of time, he was more happy. Okay, so number 2 on my list is going to be The Doctor's Wife, one of the classic episodes written by Neil Gaiman. I always like it when he writes stories for Doctor Who. I think they usually turn out pretty well. But what happens is the Doctor all of a sudden gets mail. He receives a Time Lord distress signal in the form of one of those cubes, as you also saw in the second Doctor story, The War Games. And he's really surprised and excited because he thinks there may be other Time Lords out there, and he knows that came from outside the universe, inside a pocket universe. So he's thinking maybe that's how they survived, how some of them survived, and he even recognized who it was from, one of his friends, the Corsair. So they traveled there, and whenever they got onto the planet in the pocket universe, the TARDIS got drained of all of its energy, so that's how they were going to... So they just had to wait because naturally it would recharge. But then it turns out that the creature that inhabits the planet known as House, it actually drained the TARDIS matrix from the TARDIS and placed it into a human body. Because the way House survives, it feeds off the Artron energy from TARDISes. But then he ended up finding out that that was the last TARDIS in existence, because at the time the Doctor was the last of the Time Lords. So then what happened was, in the human body, the TARDIS was supposed to eventually die out and no longer be able to inhabit the TARDIS itself. And then House found out, like I said, that that was the last TARDIS, so he was going to go to the Doctor's universe to try to find some other source of food. And then it was so heartbreaking whenever the Doctor found out that all of the Time Lords that had visited that planet had died and had their TARDISes drained, because he was saying that he had hope and it was taken away from him, and that was going to make him very dangerous because he thought that this was a chance to not be the last of his own kind anymore. And then I really liked the moment whenever he found out that that woman was actually the TARDIS matrix inside the human body, because it's really funny just watching them interact. But then what happened was the Doctor sent Amy and Rory back to the TARDIS because he wanted them to be safe, because he thought that it could get dangerous. And then House inhabited the TARDIS and then left that universe. So the Doctor was stranded there with Idris, because that's the woman's name. And he was trying to think of a way to get back to the TARDIS and defeat House. So then he thought, okay, let's try to build a TARDIS out of all the other scrapped TARDISes that were left on that planet after they were eaten. And then while they were talking, I just really liked the interactions they had, because the Doctor was saying, this doesn't come by that often, so I just want to tell you that you've never been very reliable, because that's the whole idea about the TARDIS, is that it's not perfectly functioning, and it doesn't always go where he wants it to. But then she's saying, no, but I always take you where you need to go, because after so much time, the TARDIS has acknowledged the fact that the Doctor is needed to save people, so she always takes him where he needs to go, because she knows that he can help out and save people. And then I also really like seeing the TARDIS console that they built. I thought that was really interesting, seeing how in so little time they managed to build a makeshift TARDIS. And then how it's just like all these little bits and pieces put together, because the Doctor was saying, oh, I have rebuilt a TARDIS before, I know what I'm doing. And then how also, in the meantime, Amy and Rory were running around the TARDIS because they were trying to figure out what to do, because the TARDIS matrix was telepathically messaging Rory, telling them where to go. And then in the meantime, they ended up in the 10th Doctor's TARDIS console room, because it turns out that the TARDIS usually archives them. So I thought that was really cool how it turns out that they never took the set down. They actually used it for this story. So I thought it was really cool seeing them in there again. And then I like the idea of how, like, the TARDIS was able to provide energy to the junked TARDIS to send it into the Doctor's TARDIS, because what happened was Amy and Rory had to lower the shields so they could get in there, which I thought was pretty cool then, seeing like how they materialized their makeshift TARDIS inside the 10th Doctor's TARDIS. And then how at the very end, that whole confrontation where they were in the 11th Doctor's TARDIS room, and then House was saying, "Oh, I could kill you in all sorts of ways. Like, you should fear me. I've killed hundreds of Time Lords." But then the Doctor said, "I've killed all of them, so that's why you should fear me." And then you see Idris's body's failing because then the Doctor says a human body can't hold a TARDIS matrix and live. And then what happens though is it turns out that the whole plan was the Doctor counted on the human body dying out because now that they're back in the TARDIS, the matrix can take over. And then I thought that was just really saying like how the Doctor's like, you wanted it to be very far away from here, but now she's back in her home and she's free. So then you see the TARDIS matrix overpower House and expel it. And then the final conversation between the Doctor and the TARDIS was really amazing because she was saying that like she's alive, and it was so great to be able to talk to the Doctor, and how all she wanted to say was, "Hello, Doctor, it's so very nice to meet you," because she's never really gotten to do that. Even after knowing him for over 700 years, she never actually got to talk to him like that, so it was really meaningful. And then how at the very end you see the TARDIS operate herself because she's taking the Doctor to the next place that he needs to be. So in general, I just thought it was really nice because you got to really further see the relationship between the Doctor and the TARDIS. You see how much he cares about it, how it's not just a ship, how the TARDIS is such a beloved being to him, how he really thinks of it in such a higher regard. So in general, I just really like it. It's one of those stories that I can just watch so often without really getting tired. So number 3 on the list is going to be The Fires of Pompeii, known for many such things as having Peter Capaldi before he was the Doctor, and Karen Gillan before she was Amy Pond, which I thought that was pretty interesting, especially how later on in Series 9, the episode The Girl Who Died, it turns out that because of these events, that's why the 12th Doctor looks like Caecilius, because it turned at the very end, Donna was saying, you don't need to save everyone, just try to save someone. So that's why the Doctor went back and saved Caecilius and his family. But I also just really liked the ending, especially how you see the Doctor saying that's why Vesuvius is never going to erupt, because they were changing events so that would never happen. That's why the soothsayers couldn't see it. But then he's saying that now because he's part of events, it's not just a natural occurrence that Vesuvius erupts. It turns out that that means that it's him who has to detonate Mount Vesuvius. And you could see how he's like, I don't want to have to do something like this again. Because you could tell that he was drawing parallels between having to kill his own people and destroy Pompeii. Because he was saying, I'm going to have to wipe out 20,000 people to save everyone. Just like how he had to wipe out billions of Time Lords and Daleks to save the universe. And then how Donna was willing to do it with him because she was saying, I don't want this to have to just weigh on his conscience alone. So she was going to do it with him so that he would feel a bit better. And then I just liked also a bit earlier on, whenever, what's his name, Lucius, and then Caecilius' daughter Evelina, they were revealing all this stuff about the Doctor and Donna, and then talking about stuff that was going to happen, like how they revealed the thing saying, like, she is returning, and there's something on your back, like things that would play a role later on in the series. And I just really like seeing how all that laid out. It was just really interesting seeing the idea. Oh, and also the idea of how Lucius was saying Pyrovilia is lost. That's why the Pyrovals are trying to move to Earth, which then also plays into the finale later, how it turns out that Davros and the Daleks abducted 27 planets, and Pyrovilia was one of them, and how also the idea that planets were being taken out of time and space. So I like the idea how it sets up a lot for what's going to happen later on in the series, compared to things that were more discreet in previous episodes. And I just really liked how it plays out, how you can definitely see how the events that happened weighed heavily on the Doctor's conscience, saying, like, I already had to put history back in place, I just want to leave. And how he almost left Caecilius and his family, but then Donna convinced him to come back and save them. And then how, at the very end, you see Caecilius and his family started to actually worship the Doctor and Donna as gods because of the fact that they saved them. And then the whole idea of the Doctor saying that Caecilius and his family and all of Pompeii will never be forgotten, like it will be found eventually. even though it's so destructive, like even though it was all destroyed in its ancient times. So I just like the idea of how you see the long-term effects on the Doctor, how then he decided that he needs to save people, and how then such a small, like, well, actually it's not small, it's huge, how he had to do something very similar to the Time War, where he had to wipe out so many people to save millions upon billions of other people. So definitely a story worth being in my top 5. I think that everyone did a great job with what they had to do. Number 4 on my list, this is going to seem very cliche, but I feel like a lot of people could also agree with it. It is going to be The Day of the Doctor, the 50th anniversary of the show, the Big 5-0. First of all, you just have to address the fact that you had not one, not two, but 3 Doctors. Matt Smith as the 11th Doctor, David Tennant returned as the 10th Doctor, and then you had John Hurt fully introduced as the War Doctor. And I just thought that it was very interesting how after so much time, after 8 years of modern Doctor Who, how they finally went into such great detail about the Time War, and how you find out that it was actually a new hidden incarnation of the Doctor that almost destroyed Gallifrey. And also on a subtle note, I like the idea of how they focused on the idea of the 10th Doctor and how he married Elizabeth I. I thought that was just nice how they fit that in there. And then I just like how it leads up. I like how they had Unit in this. I like the idea of, in the Black Archive, you saw pictures of all sorts of old companions. I like the Vortex Manipulator, how that was Jack's Vortex Manipulator. And then I really love the ending so much. How it wasn't just those 3 Doctors, but it turns out that every Doctor worked to save Gallifrey, because the 10th Doctor said, I started the calculations a long time ago, because it turns out that the 10th Doctor actually started the first Doctor started them, and they went on for so long. And then I love so much how they had Peter Capaldi with that small cameo, because they were saying no, all 13. And then you see that even the 12th Doctor helped to save Gallifrey. So I just thought that was really cool, though, how he hadn't even, like, they actually brought him in before Matt Smith's regeneration. I thought that was really cool how they put that in there for the 50th. I thought that was really amazing. And I like the idea of how the War Doctor interacted with the moment. I really like that they had Billie Piper come back, but for something somewhat different besides Rose Tyler, how she was actually playing the moment in the form of Bad Wolf. And I liked how she was saying, like, could you do this? Like, how the idea of the moment is that it could destroy everything, but it's so powerful that it even has a conscience. So then I like how she sort of questions the Doctor, saying, do you actually want to do this? And she's saying that your punishment if you do this is that you actually have to live on with the knowledge that you destroyed your own people. And then how just over time, like, she shows the Doctor his future selves, which is then what actually convinces him to not destroy Gallifrey. But also, they end up getting convinced because of Clara. Like, she saying, like, we have enough warriors, any idiot can be a hero, and that what they need to do is be a doctor. Saying, like, he chose his name and made a promise for a reason. So then the 11th Doctor comes up with the idea of actually trying to save his own people, because he's saying this time there's 3 of us, so now we can pull it off instead of it just being one of them. So I like the idea of how they actually freeze Gallifrey in time and place it in a pocket universe. I thought that was a really creative way of settling it. I'm sure some people will think, oh, that's so cheap, why would they do that? It's like, no, I thought that was very creative. I just love the idea of how now that doesn't have to weigh on the Doctor's mind so more. He finally feels free from the idea that he destroyed his own people and that he actually saved his own people. And then I really love that moment at the very end, how he's saying how, yeah, like he's talking about how Clara asks him if he dreams. He's like, of course I dream. And then how he's dreaming about where he's going. And then how he's talking about how he's dreaming about going home now that he finally can. So now he's set on the idea of finding Gallifrey. And then how at that very final scene it pans out and you see all of the first 12 Doctors, William Hartnell to Matt Smith. And I just thought that was so great. I thought that was a beautiful final image for the 50th anniversary. How it truly just encompassed everything that happened for the first 50 years. Also, you can't talk about the 50th anniversary and not mention the return of the mighty Tom Baker. After so much time, Tom Baker finally returned to the screens of Doctor Who. And honestly, I really don't know how to classify him. Some people think that he's an older version of the Fourth Doctor. Some people think he's a future Doctor. Personally, I kind of like to think that he's an older version of the Fourth Doctor, just because then I like the idea of thinking, oh, it turns out that he gave Osgood the scarf, because also Osgood is wearing the Fourth Doctor's scarf, so I just thought that was kind of cool. Plus the idea, it's like, we've seen past Doctors come back and they look older, so I'm like, I think you can make a reason. But I could also see how people say that he's a future Doctor, so I don't like speaking definitively, that's just my opinion. But I just thought that it was so great that after all this time, they brought back Tom Baker, the most, like, the oldest surviving Doctor, the furthest back, because William Hartnell, Patrick Troughton, and John Pertwee, passed away a long time ago. May they rest in peace. So I thought that was really great that they got the oldest surviving Doctor to come back, especially because Tom Baker is so popular. I thought that was amazing that they brought him back. I thought they did such a great job with his character. I just loved it so much. Everything about the 50th anniversary I like. I can't really complain. I know some people like to, because people just like to complain about everything, but no, I liked it. That's why I said I'm not a professional, because I just liked it. I don't like criticizing things. I like to focus on the stuff that I like. But finally, number 5 on the list is going to be Twice Upon a Time, the 2017 Christmas special, Peter Capaldi's final episode. And I know it might seem like, oh, well, it's just riding on like the recent popularity. And let's face it, that's probably why it kind of gets up there, because it is the most recent episode. But I just really like it. I just love so much what happens. I like the idea that Stephen Moffat he did what seemed to be impossible. He brought back the first Doctor. And I thought that was really cool how it was David Bradley, because in 2013 they made a movie, An Adventure in Space and Time, which talked about the show being created, and they had David Bradley play William Hartnell. So I thought that was really cool, though, how like 4 years later they had him come back to Doctor Who to actually play the first Doctor. And I thought he did such a great job, just the way he spoke and the way he moved around. I thought like I could definitely see a lot of William Hartnell in him. And it was just so great seeing the two of them together, because it wasn't just like David Tennant, Matt Smith. It's seeing like the furthest extremes. It's seeing the Doctor right before his first regeneration, and then the Doctor right before his most recent regeneration. And I like the idea of how they fit in the 10th planet there, because the Doctor wandered off ahead of Ben and Polly, and I like the idea of how they fit this in there because of the fact that there was that gap, and there was a lot of discrepancy for the first regeneration, how we never really saw it lead up, and then the idea how the first Doctor actually didn't want to regenerate, and then how at the same time the 12th Doctor also didn't want to regenerate, and then how because of the two of them refusing at the same time, that caused a disturbance in time for whenever the captain from World War I was being taken out of time temporarily. And then later on, they end up meeting, like what happens is they're all in the TARDIS, the three of them, and then the TARDIS gets abducted and taken aboard this ship from this group called Testimony. And then the first Doctor goes out there as a diversion, and they're referring to him as the Doctor of War. And then all of a sudden, Bill shows up, and then the 12th Doctor is surprised because he's thinking, how can she be here? How can she be like this? So he goes out there, and then I really like the interactions you see. I really like whenever the first and 12th Doctors were scanning the glass avatar, because the first Doctor was saying, who's this based off of? And then the 12th Doctor was saying, no one, she's computer generated. And he's saying, no, look, the face is asymmetrical, it's based off of someone. So I thought that was really interesting how even though the 12th Doctor should be a lot older and wiser, how the first Doctor is actually just very keen to pick up on those things. You actually see how wise he is, even though he's the youngest. And then I like how they ended up in the first Doctor's TARDIS. I really like seeing that. And then what was really great was they brought back Rusty, the damaged Dalek who now hates Daleks from all the way back around the very beginning of Peter Capaldi's tenure. I thought that was really cool how they brought him back for one final time, because the Doctor was saying, I'm going to find out who testimony is, and if I don't like it, I'm going to come back and stop it. And he needed a large database to figure out what it was. So he decided on trying to tap into the Dalek hive mind. So that's why he went to see Rusty. And then in the meantime, while the Doctor was talking to Rusty, I really liked seeing the First Doctor and Bill talk, because you get to find out a lot more about why the Doctor left Gallifrey. Because Bill's saying, what were you running to? And he's talking about how he wanted to find out how good can always prevail whenever evil should be the one that always triumphs over good. Because he's saying good takes loyalty, self-sacrifice, and love, so it shouldn't be practical, so how does it always win? And then Bill's suggesting that there's just some person out there who manages to maintain all of the balance. And then the Doctor saying that'd be nice, but real life isn't a fairy tale. And then everyone else knows, except for the Doctor, that Bill is talking about the Doctor, because everyone knows that the Doctor is what maintains good in the universe. And she even says that her Doctor doesn't know what maintains good and evil, like maintains the balance in the universe, but everyone who's ever met the Doctor does. And I just thought that was really amazing how she hugged the First Doctor saying, "You're amazing, never forget that." Because of the fact that it's like, this is the earliest Doctor, like he doesn't really consider himself a hero, he doesn't really realize his role in the universe. So I thought that was really nice hearing him, like having him hear that he's amazing when he really doesn't think of himself in such high regard yet, because he hasn't done anything that seems that amazing to himself yet. And then I really like whenever they take the Captain back to where he's supposed to die, because they realize that Testimony is actually a good organization where they take people out of their time stream right before they die so they can recount all of their memories, so that even though they die, their memories are still carried on and they're not forgotten. So the Doctors take the Captain back to his own time stream because they're claiming that they accept the fact that he has to die, and so did the Captain. So then whenever they get back there, the Captain's saying, I just ask one favor, could you look in on my family? And then the First Doctor says, of course, what's your last name? And then he says, Lethbridge Stewart. I thought that was so amazing, because they didn't even have to do that. He could have just been some random guy, but then it turns out that this man is actually related to the Brigadier. Which then weighs out the idea of how for the rest of the Doctor's life, how that's why he keeps meeting the Brigadier, because like he's just bound to be involved with Lethbridge Stewart. And I just thought that was really touching, because like I said, they didn't have to do that, so I thought that was really great how they worked that in there as that one little extra bonus. And then how it looks like the Captain is about to die, but then all of a sudden you hear people start singing, and everyone lays down their weapons, and the 12th Doctor explains to the First that this is the Christmas armistice, where instead of fighting for just one time in all of history for Christmas, everyone just laid down their weapons and sang. And I thought that was really amazing how they did that, how the Doctor adjusted the time stream to where it's a couple hours later, to where then it became Christmas, and that ended up saving not just the Captain's life, but also the Captain's opponent's life. And then that's whenever the First Doctor realized how he can actually be a hero. He realized how heroic his future self is and how he saves lives. So he was saying, you saved them. You saved both of them. And then he's like, so this is what it means to be a Doctor of War. Like he realizes that it's not meaning that he goes through life followed by bloodshed. It means that he goes through and saves people whenever he can. And after seeing his future self perform such a heroic act, that's when he finally comes to terms with the idea that he has to regenerate. And earlier, how we found out that the First Doctor admitted that he's afraid of regenerating because he wants to remain himself. But after seeing his future self and how great he is, he finally decides to regenerate, and it moves on. And I like how you see the First Doctor go into his TARDIS, and we finally get to hear proper final words. Because at first, you thought that the First Doctor's final words were, yes, that's good, keep warm. But this, they finally provide proper final words for the first Doctor. He says, "Here we go, the long way around," which I think is really nice. How that's just an ongoing thing. The Doctor always talking about having to go the long way around, like getting to Gallifrey the long way around, and now his future self getting to, like his past self getting to his current self. Because you had the first Doctor saying, "I think I'm ready now, but I'd like to know if you are," which I know isn't the exact quote, but don't kill me. I'm trying to save time here. So he's saying you'll find out the long way around, because he doesn't want to admit whether or not he's ready to regenerate. And I like how you see the first Doctor in the TARDIS, and he falls over, about to regenerate, and then it transitions back into William Hartnell. I thought that was really great how they gave William Hartnell the credit that he deserves. They transitioned back to that original footage of the regeneration. And I thought that was really great how they showed it as it was. And then the Doctor is talking to Bill, talking about how, like, he still doesn't think of that as the real Bill Potts, saying, like, "Oh, you're just a glass avatar of her." But then she's talking about how she's the summation of Bill's memories and how memories are important. So then what she does is she transforms into Clara, which I thought was so amazing. I was thinking it could happen, but I started to think maybe it wasn't gonna. But I thought that was really amazing. They got Jenna Coleman to come back to play Clara for the final episode of the 12th Doctor. And I thought that was really great how the 12th Doctor's memories of Clara were restored, because that was so sad that he had to forget Clara. He couldn't remember what she looked like or how she acted. He just remembered that he traveled with her. But here it is, right before he regenerates, he gets to remember Clara one more time. All of his memories are restored. I thought that was just a really great thing how they fit that in there at the end. And then what happens is another glass avatar shows up in the form of Nardole, because, like, he wanted to have one final goodbye as well. And then that speech that the Doctor gave to Bill and Nardole about how they're just memories and that he's lived such a long life that he could shatter all of the glass avatars for testimony, because he's lived through so much, he's lived so many lives. And he's saying that a life as long as his is like a battlefield, and that it's empty because all of the people that he's ever known and loved have always fallen in the end. They either leave or die or forget him. So that's why he's so hesitant to keep moving on, because he's tired of always having to live a longer life where he loses more people. But he does admit that he is going to continue living on, but he has to do it alone. And I thought that was just really sad. And he's saying time to leave the battlefield, because he acknowledged that it was time to stop fighting his regeneration. So he goes into the TARDIS on his own. And at that point, then he's talking to himself and the TARDIS, like he's saying, "I know that they'll get it all wrong without me, like the universe can't save itself." So he's saying one more lifetime won't kill anyone except me, because just the idea that he doesn't want to, but he acknowledges that he needs to. And then how he's speaking to his future self almost in a sort of context as if he doesn't think of himself as the Doctor anymore. Like he's saying, "You wait a moment, Doctor, I've got a few words to say to you." And then how he's just giving advice to his future self, saying, "Never be cruel, never be cowardly. Remember that hate is always foolish, love is wise." And then saying, "You should never tell anyone your name." And then just how at the very end his final words were, "Doctor, I'll let you go." Saying that like he's letting his future self go. He's acknowledged that he's no longer the Doctor and that the title is going on to his future self. And then how he had a massive regeneration because he'd had to hold it in for so long. And then after the Doctor regenerated, the ring fell off the 13th Doctor's finger. And I thought that was really sad just because of the story behind it, how it turns out that Peter Capaldi always wore his wedding ring even as the Doctor, because he really liked all of the support that he always got from his wife. She meant so much to him, so that's why even in character he always wore the ring. So that's kind of sad seeing it fall off. But it was just really sad seeing Peter Capaldi go, because he was the first Doctor that I saw from beginning to end. I started watching right around the end of Matt Smith's era, so Peter Capaldi was the one that I saw from very beginning. So it was really sad seeing him go. He really did become my favorite. Matt Smith was my first, and I always love him and David Tennant and Chris Eccleston. Any Doctor I love, but Peter Capaldi actually did become my favorite because I just felt like he encompassed everything that there was about the Doctor. He did such a great job. It's so sad to see him go. And overall, Twice Upon a Time really did become one of my favorites. It's just a phenomenal Christmas special. It's a phenomenal episode overall. I'm going to miss Peter Capaldi. I'm going to miss Stephen Moffat. I'm going to miss Murray Gold. He's the person who does all the music for the show, and he's leaving as well, so that's going to be sad. I'm going to miss Bill and Nardole. I'm just going to miss everything. But there are going to be plenty of years to come for Doctor Who. It's going to continue on for so long, and I'm excited to see what else is going to happen so I can expand my list of favorite episodes. And that's going to be it for today's video. Hopefully you enjoyed, and you'll hit that like button down below to show some support. Comment your thoughts on the video. Go ahead and list your top 5 if you have any. Feel free to agree or disagree, but just don't hate me because of my opinions. And subscribe if you're new to the channel. Ring that bell to be notified about more uploads. And with that, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.